Hello and welcome to Breakout Session 2 at Financial Force X Virtual Summit. Very excited to have you participating today with our session on finding your true profitability of products and services. Panel discussion with Oracle Elevator and Nubik. Before we get started, we want to review some housekeeping. Hopefully this is breakout session 2, so we've worked out all the bugs with you. I'll put my systems engineer hat on and say, if you have any problems, refresh your browser, clear your cache, check your bandwidth, close Windows, everything that you get when you call up Microsoft or Apple support, apply those issues there. Please, jokes aside, your questions, we love them. We want them. We want these to be interactive. Use that box in the lower right to enter your questions. I'll be the one seeing them. Rob and Camille won't see them. I'll be asking them to it. So I will be your moderator, your filter around those pieces. If appropriate, we'll weave them in during the session. If not, we'll take them all at the end. We will put this disclaimer up. The other piece I'd say is with these sessions, they should be available up as close as 5 minutes after we're done. So if you loved this session, you want to share it with one of your coworkers, you want to share it with one of your buddies, you want to frighten your competition, go ahead and you will be able to share those as quickly as possible, 5 minutes when we're done. Quick agenda, we'll do some introductions, we'll learn what it was like at Oracle Elevator before Financial Force. They'll do a great job of taking you through the solution stack and the project overview, going over some results. And like I said, we'll probably be weaving some of the questions. I know I'll have questions inside the session, and then we will take any other questions there at the end. So by way of introductions, I'm Joe Thomas. I'm the analytics evangelist at Financial Force, but I am the least important person on this session. So I'm going to turn it over to Rob from Oracle Elevator.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Rob Heald. I'm the Vice President of Finance for Oracle Elevator. Been with them for a little over 2 years, and I'll be talking about my time with them, as well as I've come from another elevator company previous and worked on system optimization with them as well. So it's in my niche, and I look forward to sharing the experience with you.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. Well, my name is Camille, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer here at Nubik. I oversee the sales, the business development, and the marketing side of the house. I've been with the organization for 6 years already. Prior to that, I was in a very similar role, but in a Microsoft Dynamics space. So all in all, I've been working with organizations that want to optimize the way they operate for close to 20 years now. So I'm thrilled to be with you today. Thank you for inviting me. Hopefully you'll learn something new during this presentation. Okay, before we begin, let me just tell you a little bit more about Nubik. So first, we are a digital transformation expert firm. We leverage the #1 cloud platform, Salesforce, to help our customers thrive. We're about 120 employees and growing fast. Now, I'm located in beautiful Montreal, which explains the French-Canadian accent that I'm sure you've all picked up on already, but our employees and customers are located everywhere across North America. Since 2003, we've completed thousands of what we call multi-cloud projects. So some big ones, some smaller ones. They're multi-clouds because we deploy many Salesforce and Financial Force products for a single customer, and we make sure that the user experience is optimized and that data flows seamlessly between all the different pieces. Simply put, we provide our customers with the tools and strategies they need to compete and to outperform the other guys. And the project we'll talk about today with Oracle Elevators was really exciting because it's a great example of how we help our customers with, starting with finding new leads all the way until contract renewal from their own customers. So also, I'll be taking a couple of minutes towards the end to talk about FieldFuse. So FieldFuse is our proprietary integration between Salesforce Field Service and Financial Force. So if you care about profitability for your organization, and if you're dispatching technicians to customer sites, this should really resonate with you. And with that, Rob, talk to us about Oracle.
I think it's important for me to give you a high overview of the elevator industry so that you can understand really how the system's built and the components of the system from a financial reporting standpoint. So these are our four major lines of business. The first one's modernization. Think of that as a construction project. We're under the percent complete method of accounting. So I'll kind of go through what PSA means to us from a project standpoint. Also revenue recognition when it pertains to PSA and ultimately the project costing and how that's set up. Really enjoy the solution as it sits today that Nubik and myself have come up with, and I want to share that with you. Repairs is more or less a modernization, just not the same dollar volume. A smaller modernization usually handles smaller type of repairs on an elevator. The maintenance piece is really an elevator company's bread and butter. These are the maintenance contracts where we service elevators across the United States and have them under a preventative maintenance plan. Accounts for probably about 50% of our revenue. Give or take a few. And then there's callbacks, a small piece, a high profit piece of our business where customers call us, we respond to the call, and we perform a service that's outside of the maintenance contract that we bill on a case-by-case basis. And that's where really FSL comes into play heavily for us from a Salesforce perspective and how that will feed projects. And I'll get into that a little bit as well. So overall, that's the elevator industry. Every elevator's business is set up more or less with these lines of business. There are, with the bigger OEMs, there are a construction line of business, which are major construction projects. We handle modernization piece of that, which is an existing building and performing a gut of the elevator and a install of a elevator in an existing framework. Thank you.
Very good. Excellent. Let's transition right away to the live at Oracle elevator before Financial Force.
So it was our CEO is a forward thinker, Paul Bellevue, and he really wants to take the company to the next level, and so realized very quickly that our former current system at the time was not going to take us where we needed to be, and so we started looking for opportunities to improve our system functionality. Some of the pitfalls, as you see, I'm not going to read these bullets, but it's a very manual environment. A lot of Excel intervention, a lot of data manipulation on Excel. When we started using Excel as our source of truth, we realized that the volume of journal entries that it has taken to record financial results was quite extensive. And so we needed to look at a stronger path of automation. And that's where Salesforce and Financial Force have been able to step in. As you can see, we've also grown over the past several years, over 100%. And so that is that also forced the need to think bigger, think more sustainable, and think more automated as we took on many more contracts in business. Camille, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, well, there's a few things that kind of pop. So, when you didn't have any job costing, no variance tracking, for example, can you elaborate a little bit on that piece?
Yeah, we would, again, we would push everything to an Excel spreadsheet for our project costing component to really dictate what our revenue was for modernization projects. And so that spreadsheet became a project in itself, managing that on a month-to-month basis, pulling 7 reports out of our legacy system, putting them into a certain place in the Excel spreadsheet. And if the Excel spreadsheet was working that day, great. If it wasn't, we would have to delay it to the next day and figure out what the problem was. So there, again, I can't emphasize enough to do something like project costing. And I'll get into project costing in the current state with Salesforce and Financial Force in the slides to come. But very good question. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, Rob. Well, I always refer to like heroic uses of Excel and spreadsheets, and I'm just looking at this and just how many core spreadsheets do you think you had in play at any time, and how are you doing version control? Where are you doing version control of those things? This just looks like a nightmare.
We did have a process for version control. It's funny that you mentioned that.
Mhm.
I've worked on version 53, 54, 55. It gets up there with the longer projects. Let me put this in perspective. Just to record revenue on a month-to-month basis, we had 2 breathing spreadsheets that we've copied over to the next month and the next month and the next month. And it's to record our modernization and repair revenue, and it's to provide us with guidance on our maintenance revenue. We defer revenue for maintenance because we bill customers not only monthly, which hits directly in that month, but also quarterly and annually. And we capture the revenue on a monthly basis of those quarterly and annual billings. And as you can imagine, that's a process that you have to go through in an Excel format to calculate that, because our legacy system wasn't able to accommodate that request. However, Financial Force has a perfect solution for us, which I'll get into, that allows us to defer it in an automated way, which means that the spreadsheets are strictly for reporting now, which is excellent, and not for calculating such a integral part of our business. And making up those spreadsheets, we had to pull 7 reports out of the legacy system to massage these spreadsheets. 5 on the POC side, which is the WIP, what we refer to it as, for our project costing, and then 2 for the deferred maintenance to get that buttoned up.
No, that's I'm sure you don't miss those days. Another thing that kind of pops up is the up to 6 weeks to bill an extra service. Can you elaborate on that, and what were some of the potential impacts because of that?
Yeah, so there's a lot of volume in our legacy system. There's a lot of checks and balances that were done outside of the system on a spreadsheet. The timeliness of that, with all that was going on and the growth that we endured. Worst case scenario, we're billing our callbacks 6 weeks out, which isn't ideal. Customers seem to forget that the service was performed by then. And there's a higher dispute rate as a result of that. We needed to pull that in. So we were able to pull that 20% outage in quite significantly. We're days, and in worst case scenario, a week out from billing callbacks, where our future state, once we're fully automated with the callback piece of this, is billing on time as of that day. And the tech will be able to email the customer as he or she's leaving the site.
Rob, I have to imagine there were some pretty significant DSO, or day sales outstanding, implications around that.
Right, and you hit the nail on the head. We've improved our DSO significantly with the transformation of the software.
Well, for all, my last comment here, and I think we shift over. I worked at the other Oracle, and we had these exact same challenges. So it's nice to see, they went at it in the early 90s. So you weren't that far behind them in terms of having at these pieces.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. Not to confuse Oracle Elevator with actual Oracle IT solutions, ERP. And confuse matters more. I actually helped roll out Oracle at my former business ERP that I have quite extensive knowledge in.
Well, there's no Financial Force Elevator company that we know of, so we'll help you. We'll help you keep it straight here.
Thank you.
All right. So the Boltz project. So there's a neat story about why this project was called Boltz.
Yeah. So this brings us in a perfect segue into where we are today. We created Project Boltz in November of 2019, prior to our January 1, 2020 go live of our first pilot program. And Camille and I will go through the timeline in later slides. However, this company is made up of many acquisitions, and so we were spread out throughout the eastern side of the U.S. predominantly, and Boltz not only pulled us into where we are headquartered now, the Tampa area, but also one of our owners that has quite extensive dealings with our private equity group is part of the Tampa Bay Lightning, and so we thought that it was fit for us to call it Project Boltz as a more or less an honor of Vinik at the Tampa Bay Lightning organization, and so that's where Boltz came to life, and it's still living strong now as we continue to optimize it.
Very good. Thank you. We lost you for a second there, Rob, but I think you were done with the Boltz story. So let's move on to this. This is a very interesting slide. So maybe share, before we dive into it, share what it is exactly, where it sits in your office.
So this is a actual poster on my wall in front of me, and there was a lot of confusion on what Project Boltz meant to the organization. And we needed to map out what a really user-friendly go-to poster or a desk card or a thumbtack on a cardboard or a wall. And so we created this high-level depiction of what the system looks like and what pieces of our day-to-day lives fall within this system. So as you can see, we have the Sales Cloud, and one of the driving forces of Salesforce and Financial Forces, we now entered the cloud environment, which is extremely important for us in order to capture real-time data, have a endless amount of data we can store. And so it was very attractive to us to enter this cloud journey, if you will. And so as you can see, top left to right, we've got our CRM and our map anything geofencing piece, and then FSL, which is Field Service Lightning, which handles all of our dispatch optimization, route optimization through an optimizer that feeds tickets continuously to our techs. And that all of these have a direct impact on Financial Force, a direct feed into Financial Force, and infiltrate Financial Force with the data that we need in order to do basic things like project costing and accounts that are set up in the Salesforce that we need transcended into Financial Force. Those types of things are working in unison together. And then on the bottom piece, Financial Force, PSA, where our projects sit, that's really the brain of our system. And then we have Supply Chain Management, which we'll get into, Financial Force, and then Billing Central, where we use our maintenance billing in this, I call it a domain, and it organizes our deferred maintenance and what we're able to record on a monthly basis. And it keeps track of all of our contracts, our service contracts, and which is extremely important for us. And it keeps track and organization of them in Billing Central.
Great. Hey, what about if we take them piece by piece on the Financial Force side, of course, then, if we talk about PSA, so you've mentioned like it's really the brain of the system. That's really the foundation for all project costing, right?
That is correct. And so we project costing out of PSA. We use something called a rate card. Rate cards are attached to accounts, and what happens on a costing perspective is the time is done or the material is ordered from the tech out in the field. That material makes its way through from FSL through SCM into PSA, and it's attached. The costing of it is transcended into PSA under our projects platform. The time card is done in FSL. It's initiated in FSL. It's debriefed in FSL, closed out, and pushed immediately into PSA. And a rate card attaches to it. And that rate card is a fully burdened rate. And what that means is that it's not only the cost of the technician, but it also covers the overhead of the branch. So we're able to instill the overhead percentage into our costing structure so that we can cover ourselves from a contract perspective, a billing perspective, and a revenue perspective. And so once that time card comes through, the rate card attaches to it based on the location where the time is recorded. And that generates the labor costing on a continuous basis. And this happens many times throughout the day. And it's real time as well.
Mm-hmm. And this can be fairly complicated, right? Because you've got different location, different rate cards, and the time piece of it is really important. So the capture, as you mentioned, Rob, happens in the Salesforce Field Service mobile application. That's used pretty much as a UI for PSA, but everything then rolls back up. We also have employees that are just sitting at the head office doing different type of tasks, and they enter their time directly in PSA.
That's right.
Correct?
That's right. And we also have a bolt-on HR function with a software called UltiPro, which we ping the hours to UltiPro, and then they ping it back to Financial Force FFA for us to record the costing. So really PSA isn't recording the costing on the financials. It goes from a labor perspective, it goes through UltiPro back into FFA from a costing perspective. So PSA is really where project entrance from a non-field technician standpoint.
Yeah. And then some of the complexity also came from the fact that you've got multiple business hours, right? You guys operate everywhere across the nation. So that was a challenge. And you've got resources that are shared between different regions as well. A ton of contract-based rules, with many, many exceptions that had to be taken care of. So, typical example that we like to give is customer ABC calls after 6 p.m. He gets billed 1.5 times, the hourly rate.
Right.
What about holidays? All that kind of stuff, it gets managed directly with the solution. So
that's right. And so there's also another rate card that you just brought up. There's also a billing rate card, and this is standard across the U.S. where we have a standard rate. And when a technician does responds to a callback, the hours are generated for that callback. We call it a callback ticket. That callback ticket's then pushed to PSA, and this billing rate card is tagged to these hours through the projects. We call it miscellaneous adjustments, and then a billing event is generated through that callback, those callback hours, and associated with those billable rate cards, and then an invoice is produced through the billing event. And then it goes to the customer. And all that happens on a automated basis up to the point where we're actually hitting process SIN, which is a sales invoice, to send to the customer.
Yeah, and I think something that was pretty neat that we developed to help with the adoption by the technicians, right, is the concept or the notion of clock in, clock out. So those of you that may be familiar with Salesforce Field Service or PSA, it's not a concept that exists naturally. So we've developed something that's very straightforward and helps ensure that everybody does that piece of their work properly. And then there's the notion of a in-route time card as well, right? When they're in route, most of the time it's non-billable. So there's that whole concept. Everything it's trapped, captured, rolls back up to PSA, and then the costing magic can happen there. So It's a very neat process.
Yeah, it is.
Camille, there's the questions are coming in fast and furious here, and there was one that I think right off of what you were just saying there on how accounting for non-labor cost allocations. How is that happening?
Non-labor cost allocations, we're doing that through, there's an allocation piece in FFA where you can allocate based on percent of revenue. You can allocate based on any parameters that you set in those allocations. So let me give you a example of a non-labor allocation. Branch regional centers. So our branches are structured under a region. Some 6, some have 9, some have 5. And so that regional, what we would refer to a regional headquarters, allocated to those branches underneath that region. And so in order to perform that allocation, we base it off of the percent of revenue volume in those branches to absorb those regional expenditures. That can be done under the allocation platform of FFA.
Great. And then, like I said, they're coming in fast and furious here. There's a lot of questions about the sort of implementation cycle. I don't know if we're going to cover that later, but it was, did you use Field Service Lightning before Financial Force? Maybe let me just rattle a few of these off, and then you can probably hit them. Did you have FSL in place before Financial Force? Did you implement FSL the same time you implemented Financial Force? And did you implement all those Financial Force products at the same time, or did you start with one and add on? And then, what was the adoption time for this entire project? So I think I hit 6 people's questions right there. So
let me answer it simplistically. So. Yep. What you see on the screen here, this slide, we rolled this out at the same time.
Wow.
All of it together. And credit to Nubik and their team for the deadlines that we needed to hit in order to accomplish that. But as you can imagine, there was a lot of things that needed to take place leading up to this. We do have a couple timeline slides.
Great, that's right.
Succeeding this slide, and we'll get into that. That will answer the implementation piece. But we did roll out all of these, I call them domains, at the same time.
That's a real testament to the both of you.
Thank you. So we've been talking quite a bit around, about PSA. Let's dive a little bit on the supply chain management, or what's now called OPI from Financial Force, right? So the procurement, the purchasing stuff. I think, Rob, that piece is driven by the field service mobile application once again, right?
That's right. We felt that it was very important to procure to pay very quickly, from the technician needing a very small part to ordering a modernization part, which is a big order for us, right? We needed to accommodate the entire spectrum of the ordering process. The technician out in the field needing to satisfy a part, they can find it on their handheld, they can request it straight from their app. It pushes into a requisite phase, which then gets put into a expedited queue to create a purchase order from the SCM platform. That purchase order is generated, sent to the vendor. Vendor receives the purchase order, acknowledges the purchase order, sends the part based on our instructions, sends it either overnight, our 2-day air, our ground, depending on what we tell them and how fast we need it. And then the technician can receive that part within a day, within a couple of days, or within the time frame that we stipulate.
And so it goes from a requisition to the reception. What happens with the actual expense?
The expense then is once we receive the invoice from the vendor, we have put out enough communication to our vendors that we need the PO number. And so they will add the PO number to their invoice in the perfect world. That invoice is matched to the purchase order, and then we procure, and then we line it up for payment, if you will, through FFA and our accounts payable platform. And so the matching of those two is extremely important. If they don't match, we have something called PPVs in place, which is purchase price variances, which go through another approval hierarchy. But ideally, in the perfect world, they match. Vendor gets paid, technician gets part. We're all happy.
And the expense goes right away to your COGS, right? Your cost of goods sold.
That's correct. FFA organizes it, and once that invoice is entered into the system, it immediately gets costed.
And I think it's important to note here that it gets costed, but directly against the right project. So that's the key here. So all purchases done on a project are tracked, including the technician time, right? So if a tech clocks in 2 hours, we'll know exactly how much to bill the customer, but also how much to pay. So there's a lot of automation to know exactly how to handle these 2 hours, right?
That's correct. And so the requisite is created from that project. So whenever a technician's on site, there's a service appointment associated with the project. So once the requisite button appears or is enabled for that project or that service appointment, they can hit the requisite button. It's associated with the project. It pushes the PSA. It's organized under there. And then AP takes the matching piece of it and under FFA, and that ultimately is the cycle of the POAP requisite process.
Perfect. I'm looking at Joe. I think there's probably some questions coming in. Maybe
No,
just one last thing.
Yeah, I would say I think we should get to the implementation side of the house because I think you're going to address the questions that I'm getting there.
Okay, perfect then. Maybe before we dive into that implementation, I think the last piece that might be interesting to the audience is around the billing central. So talking about billing and that entire engine for your business, Rob.
So yeah, this is where we went from an Excel spreadsheet that's carried over since the inception of the organization, it seems, to the system taking over our deferred maintenance piece of maintenance, billing, and revenue. And so we bill thousands and thousands of invoices a month to our customers that are under maintenance. And so those invoices have frequencies associated with them. The monthly invoices go straight to revenue. Those that are not monthly go into a deferred maintenance queue under revenue recognition. And so revenue recognition takes over from there and organizes how much revenue is earned within that month and organizes how much should be deferred moving forward. And it does the same thing for credits as well, SCRs. And those are notated as sales credits. The credit on a maintenance invoice goes through that same process. It gets a little bit more complicated. I'm trying to keep it high level. And billing documents are created through the contracts. Billing documents give us a line of sight on what is going to be generated as an invoice, and so that you can go through a review stage of your maintenance invoices before they are created into a SIN, a sales invoice. So I think that touches all the bullet points there under the Billing Central platform.
Great.
Excellent. So we could look at the actual timeline. So we've got 2 slides to kind of cover the entire span. What you can see here is that, I think the most important thing in any project, financial forces, Salesforce, is what we call the business process review phase, right? So we actually spent 1 week on site and then 1 month reviewing, documenting, refining, all that kind of stuff, right? Is there something to be said on that actual phase, Rob?
A lot of collaboration, a lot of in-person meetings that took place with both teams, both Oracle and Nubik. It was extremely important for Nubik to understand of where the implementation needs to go, and understanding that business. Nubik needed to walk away from that period really with something in their mind on how this may work, and so that's really the importance of what we had to do in this time period.
Yeah, and that's when we define also all the interactions between all the pieces from the solutions that we saw on the previous slide. Just some examples of the deliverables of a good BPR phase, in our opinion. They include detailed workflows, which they're referred to very often during the project, right? So that's also some stuff that we use over and over again during the actual build phase, which as you can see, we went on a build phase for a period of 8 months. So we had a quick pilot for Sales Cloud and Pardot in the middle there. But that build phase was done with a workshop approach. So the majority of the workshops were held remotely between Nubik team that's a little bit everywhere across North America, and the folks at Oracle that also were not all in Tampa. But then at some key moments, right, the both teams actually, we held some meetings in Tampa, some meetings in Montreal in the middle of the winter, right? I still remember Rob coming in with the no jacket. It was freezing that week, so it was pretty funny. But yeah, that workshop approach that we took, Rob, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on the attendees and how that was happening.
Yeah, so there's we spread them out or dice them up, if you will, based on domain, and it was extremely important to have that primal focus on each piece. Billing Central, for instance, and PSA on another workshop. But they were organized obviously with the Nubik lead. There were many leads at Nubik. There was an FSL lead, an SCM lead, a PSA lead, and a Billing Central FFA lead. And really those 4 areas with the primal focus needed its own workshop in order to vet out the flow. We designed it. We showed Nubik how our business ran. They interpreted it a certain way. We revisited the interpretation, and then we started adding what the system started, the capabilities that the system needed in order for us to function when Go Live presented itself. And so those workshops were very long and arduous, and were more than one in many cases. But I feel like the end product speaks for itself, and it was well worth it.
Hey, maybe before we dive into the second portion of the timeline, maybe there's something to be said about data migration.
Yeah, so the data migration piece, accounts were the first thing to go into the system because our CRM went live prior to. I misspoke on the previous slide. We did unleash our CRM, but that was something that, in my opinion, can stand alone and function on itself. But we did unveil our CRM piece of it in mid-June, or June 1st, excuse me, as the timeline reveals. And so accounts just migrated in whole over to the system, the new system from the legacy system. The scrubbing piece came with the contents of the account, the service contracts under the account, the projects under the account, the billing terms, the financial piece. Those took a considerable amount of time and resources to get into a format that both Salesforce and FFA will accept, and that allows us the very minimal time to turn it around and be able to perform that function in the new system. And as you can imagine, there was a lot of work that was necessary, and a lot of resources. So if I were to caution anyone about to go into an implementation and a migration, is certainly put the resources, don't be afraid to expend up front for the resources necessary in order to have your migration scrubbed to the best of its ability before unleashing it. I've worked both sides. We've had perfect scrubs on areas, but we've also had to adapt very quickly to some bad information that was migrated over. You can't catch it all. And so that fire drill in the back end is very, very stressful, as you can imagine. So put the resources up front. Make sure you build your time frame for migration. Don't overlook the migration piece whatsoever. It's really the foundation of any go live, in my opinion. Having good data in the system from the get-go.
Yeah, and I don't know if, so maybe there are folks in the audience that have never really gone through this type of process. So kind of a workflow, if you will, for data migration starts from the old system. Obviously, you extract the data, you drop it into usually a tool like Excel. You do the mapping to the new fields, hopefully with the assistance of your implementation partner. Once that's done, we load that data into a sandbox environment. Then that's where all the testing happens. So lots of tests to Rob's point. You do the final scrubbing, final validation, and when everything is ready to go, we migrate that into the production environment. So that's kind of a 30,000 feet, one straightforward migration strategy that we've used.
Well, mine was 30,000 feet. Yours was pretty detailed there.
So 10,000 feet.
You guys are doing a great job of answering people's questions as they're kind of coming in. So it's I'm not jumping in, but I will say we got about 10 minutes left, and I'm going to need 2 minutes at the end. So maybe we go to the next slide here.
So the first initial 12 months led you, Rob, to actual first region go live, right, for about 100 technicians.
Right.
And then as I transitioned there, maybe you can explain a little bit what happened during that, after that first go live up until today.
Yeah, so the system was in a good state, good enough for us to pilot. And so we piloted January 1, 2020 with one of 4 regions in the US. And so that pilot really surfaced a lot of optimization opportunities. And so we spent the next 11 months optimizing this before getting it ready for the next go live, which occurred in December 1, 2020 with 2 more regions. And we continuously optimize. And I'm going to stress that point because, I challenge my team and I want to convey to the audience that optimization will always be a piece of our business. Best practices, best use, cooler things come out in Financial Force, cooler things come out in Salesforce with each, addition, version, if you will, implementing that into your business's best processes. And so, back to go live December 1st, 2020, it was important for us to do that in our pilot, to continuously think of ways to enhance our user experience in order for them to function at the most optimal level. And so December 1st, 2020 came, and then our final go live was March 1st, 2021. Seems like years ago, but it was only months ago. And now we're fully functional under Salesforce Financial Force, and we're continuously optimizing. Now we're turning the corner on making this the coolest software out there.
That's pretty impressive. It's, when you factor in when you factor the fact, did I say that right? That you've done a couple of acquisitions in the meantime, and they're using the solution. So that's pretty impressive. I wanted to say something, but it kind of slipped my mind now. So, it's the old crawl, walk, run approach, right? So I think it's important for everybody. Don't try to stick everything in there. Obviously, you've got to have a usable system, but you will mature at the same time as the solution. So we do this for a living, and we see this pattern over and over again. So it's normal, but you got to get going at some point.
Great point. If we would have rolled out to the entire U.S. January 1, 2020, we would have fell on our face, and that's no discredit to anyone, anyone at Nubik. Or we needed a pilot, and my point there is extremely important to pilot the software. If you're going into an implementation and a data migration, pick a branch or a location that is a small piece of your overall business to really vet out what the software and how the software is going to interact with your business.
Great. So I just want to take 3 minutes before we end this and talk a little bit on the technical side of things. So you saw all the Salesforce and Financial Force products that make up the solution for Rob and our friends at Oracle Elevator. So field service from Salesforce is at the core of the solution, and it's augmented by Financial Force, right? And Field Fuse is our integration between field service and Financial Force, which we've packaged and have deployed to various customers. What you're seeing now is, again, a 10,000 feet view of the information flow between Financial Force, OPI, TSA, accounting, as well as Salesforce Field Service. So what is Field Fuse exactly? So I'm going to keep it simple. First, Field Fuse keeps the inventory consumed in field service always in sync with Financial Force OPI. So that's key. Second, it also ensures that every hour clocked by field technicians using field service from Salesforce gets it automatically logged back into PSA. And lastly, for those of you that are familiar with PSA already, we use the project object as a repository for all costs associated to a project, so both labor and material costs. So you now have access to your real cost as opposed to using average cost or other methods. And with your real costs, you now have access to your true profitability. And you can see it by job, by technician, by day, by van, whichever way you want to see it. And as you heard from Rob, so Field Fuse can have a significant impact on your entire operations. So as executives, you have access to data that wasn't available before. Your purchasing department can now centralize all purchases and then adjust in real time based on the demand in the field. Your field service people all of a sudden have a real-time view of the stock available, which can have a significant impact on the first call fix rate, which is a key metric in that world, of course. And your accounting team, of course, well, now they can send accurate invoices quickly. So there you have it. Field Fuse is an inventory and resource cost management solution for Salesforce Field Service built on top of Financial Force, really. So if you want to know more, just reach out, or you can scan this QR code with your phone. It's going to take you to a specific section of our website. And with that, I can turn it around to the Q&A, Joe.
Great. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of people, not so much questions, but just marveling, commenting that the impressive nature of this project. So a real testament to the two of you. And one of the questions, and a lot of it kind of down that line, is you embarked on a pretty impressive digital transformation of your company. You kind of listed the pains early in the piece. Was there one or two in particular that drove? How did that justify going for this kind of project? Was it the sum total of those 9 or 10 or 12 issues in the piece, or was there one in particular that was how you were able to say, look, we need to change?
Yeah, it's how we're organizing data, where the data needed to go. Again, cloud is a very attractive option, and automation was another piece. So cloud, automation, and optimization. If I were to put it into 3 words, those are the 3 words. The optimization piece is extremely important. Our technicians need to get to the next preventative maintenance stop in the most ideal fashion. Our optimizer is able to perform that for us and drip feed the ticket to that next optimal stop. And so having that automated is extremely useful. So those 3 things were a very heavy factor on our decision.
Great. Well, I do want to tell you, this is one of the more impressive projects I've seen done by one of our partners, done at a customer. You're using virtually every product we own here at Financial Force. You did it in a big bang. A real testament to Nubik, the IP that Nubik's created, their implementation, but a real testament to you, Rob, your willingness, your expertise, your project management skills.
Thank you.
So I want to thank both of you for providing this. This is excellent piece, excellent work, and something that I know I will be sharing with other customers when I have this available in the next 5 minutes, I think. Camille, if we can go to the last slides here. We're almost done with day 1 here of FFX, but there's still more content. I'm going to be running to a product roadmap session on analytics in the next 2 minutes, which is why I'm moving this right along. We got a full day of content tomorrow. There's a bunch of stuff Thursday, but we do want to recommend. You can see Nubik up there front and high into right in the top middle, but we have other partners as well. Please visit them. Talk to Nubik about the Fuse IP that they've created. Talk to our other partners about implementations that they've done. We're particularly proud of our partner ecosystem. We couldn't be where we are without them, and it's pretty soon. I have to say, not to put words in Rob's mouth, but I can't imagine doing that project on your own. So, yep. And I think that's, if I got one more slide here, and that's it. That's it. We'll see you in the product sessions. They're being repeated both today and tomorrow. So if you come to analytics today, you can go to PSA tomorrow, or if you go PSA today, FFA tomorrow. We've duplicated them. They'll be exactly the same. Thank you both for really an amazing project.
Thank you.
you.
It's a pleasure.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.